When talk turns to great NBA rivalries, invariably the conversation steers toward Celtics versus Lakers. Hi, I'm Michael D. Lee. In 1982, my late broadcast partner Larry Kotler and I had the opportunity to interview Chick Hearn and Johnny Most, the legendary late play-by-play voices of the Lakers and Celtics, respectively. A little background about this 1982 interview. The Western and Eastern Finals were set to begin, with the defending champion Celtics taking on Philadelphia and the Lakers opposing San Antonio. Many thought another Celtics-Lakers matchup in the finals was inevitable, but not Chick and Johnny. As it turned out, Johnny was right to worry. The Sixers knocked off the Celtics, only to be taken down in the finals by the Lakers, who easily handled San Antonio. The first segment features Chick. The second segment features Johnny. Ideally, we'd have them on at the same time, but it didn't happen for reasons I can't remember nearly 40 years later. Anyway, here are the interviews with Chick Hearn and Johnny Most on Saturday Sportsline Memories.
The sound of sports, all sports, here at 1040 on the WHO Saturday Sportsline.
17 minutes past 1 o'clock. This is WHO Saturday Sports Line. Larry Kotler along with Mike Lee, and we are being joined at this time by Chick Hearn, the broadcaster of the Los Angeles Lakers and the National Basketball Association. We'll also be joined very shortly by Johnny Most, who's the play-by-play man for the Boston Celtics. Chick, first of all, welcome to the program. The Lakers really took care of the Phoenix Suns, but now you go up against a team which for many years has not quite gone as far as they have this year. And this year, the San Antonio Spurs look to be maybe more dominant than they have been in previous years.
They're an outstanding basketball team, Larry. In fact, they should not be anything less than even money to beat the Lakers. They are a very sound, well-rounded team. They've got a new coach as of last year, Stan Albeck, who is a former Illinois man like myself, so we're very close to WHO. And Stan has not only done a great job with what he had, but he acquired a player with 57 games left in the regular season named Mike Mitchell out of Auburn. He was been with Cleveland, and Cleveland made another of their asinine moves and gave away another great player for nothing. And as a result, Stan's got a real good basketball club. You don't beat Seattle 8 out of 10 times during the regular, rather including the playoffs in the regular year like Stan did if you're not good.
If you want to talk with Chick Hearn or Johnny Most, Johnny will be joining us momentarily, Chick. 282-5111 is our local line for Des Moines and surrounding suburbs. 1-800-532-1111, the toll-free statewide Watts line. And outside the state, 515-282-5120. We invite your calls. Those calls must be prepaid. And, of course, now with the Lakers situation, the L.A. club has been playing good ball. They had some dissension early in the year with the firing of Paul Westhead and people talking about how the ownership was letting players run the franchise. But under Pat Riley, Chick, the Lakers seem to have been able to put it together very well.
Well, first of all, there was never any dissension on the Laker basketball club. The Westhead thing was blown out of context. I don't want to even spend time talking about it. He had been released 5 days prior to the announcement. The only thing the management did not do was tell Paul that he's released. And then Magic, unfortunately, popped off over in Utah. And if I'd have been the owner of the club, I'd have fined Magic at least $10,000 for saying he wanted to be traded. But that's all behind them. The Lakers had a championship-caliber basketball club with Mitch Kupchak, acquired as a free agent, making $875,000 a year, and he went down in early November with a leg that'll probably have to have even additional surgery now, and his future in basketball is very much on the line. But the Lakers have regrouped. They picked up McAdoo, who's given them a big lift, and I think they're capable of playing with anyone, and I think they've proved it.
Chick, you go back a long way with the Lakers, broadcasting their games and the Los Angeles-Boston series, and we are being a bit presumptuous, I guess, but it's my feeling anyway that Los Angeles and Boston will end up in the finals. It seems almost predestined given the history of the NBA, and Boston has always beaten Los Angeles in those final series, even going back to 1959 when the Lakers were still in Minneapolis, and Boston swept that series in 4 straight games. But looking ahead now to 1982, and assuming that Boston and Los Angeles do make it to the final series, what would you say the chances are of Los Angeles knocking off Boston? Better than they were back in the 60s, about even, or worse?
Better than they were in the 60s for the simple reason they have a center now. They never had a center back in those days, and they were losing each year to Bill Russell and company. Their best center was a guy named Ray Felix that you never heard of. They had a guy named Jimmy Krebs, who is now dead, God rest his soul, Leroy Ellis, Gene Wiley, people like that. You don't win the NBA championship without a great center. It's just been proven through the years. The Lakers won one in 1972 with Wilt Chamberlain at center. They won one in 82 with Kareem at center. And Kareem right now is on the top of his game. So I would say that there are much better chances, even though Boston would have the home court advantage. They split on the regular season. Each club won on the other guy's floor, by the way.
Well, Chick, what is your opinion of this year's Boston club anyway? Compare it to the 1960s Celtic teams.
Totally different kind of basketball club because, of course, basketball is being played in a different style. But I think that the thing that has lifted the Boston Celtics to notoriety in the last 2 years was the acquisition of a fellow named Robert Parrish. Parrish, when he played out here on the coast with Golden State after coming out of Centenary, was a very average basketball player. But if you're in the right place at the right time and the chemistry is right, Larry, things will work. And that's what's happened in Boston, plus the fact that Bill Fitch has done such a remarkable job. And I think that the Celtics, from top to bottom, have the best personnel in the league. Well, that's a pretty good way to start out right there. In other words, they can take a guy out of any position and replace him, and you'll not even know he's gone, and that includes Larry Bird. It does not include Parrish. In my opinion, Parrish is the most valuable player on that team.
Well, Chick, I would have to agree with you. Talking to one of the Boston broadcasters earlier in the week, he felt exactly the same way. But you've got some obviously some great talent on that team. You've got you start right in the middle with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. You've got Magic Johnson, Keith Wilkes, or I should say Abdul Wilkes.
Yeah.
I get the name all confused, but I think you know who I'm talking about. Mr. Wilkes, we'll call him.
Yeah.
And Bob McAdoo has come over. You got Norm Nixon in the backcourt. There's some awesome talent on that club.
Superior team, particularly the starters outside of Kurt Rambis, a kid that played in Greece just a year ago, no NBA experience. He had to go in when Kupchak went out, and he's done a remarkable job. And after working this summer, I think he'll be an even better player. But he gives us a pretty good game night in and night out. You can know on a scale of the 10 what he's going to give you every night. Michael Cooper, you did not mention. Cooper, our sixth man, is probably the best sixth man in basketball. He comes off the bench. He's out of New Mexico, could be a starter on the Lakers or any other team in the league. Nixon, vastly underrated, tremendous player. Magic Johnson in every facet of the game. Now, remember, I said every department of the game. Put them all together, he's the best player alive. No question. He does it night after night.
Chick, you mentioned that Paul Westhead was gone. Now, here's a guy that led the Lakers to the NBA title a couple of years ago when he took over from Jack McKinney.
Did a great job.
And what is the difference in the team this year? Obviously, in the early part of the season, they were struggling. They got rid of Westhead, and they picked up Pat Riley. What has Pat Riley done for that club?
Pat has brought an air of confidence to the players. He is so recently with the league, and then he was in the broadcast booth with me for 3 years, so that he never really left the club. And the players respect him as what he did as a player, respect him as what he did as a broadcaster. And I think that it was just a combination of things that you can't really put your finger on, Larry. But he has done a remarkable job. I can't tell you at the moment, but I believe he's 54 wins since he took over. They were 7-4 when he got the job. He sweeps by Phoenix. Everybody expects him to stumble. He's not going to stumble. The guys just love him, and they play their hearts out for him. And he's got them playing some of the best defense, maybe the best defense that any Laker team has ever played.
Our guest right now is Chick Hearn, the broadcaster for the Los Angeles Lakers. Momentarily, we hope to be joined by Johnny Most. We're trying to line things up one way or another and get Johnny on the air with you, Chick, at the same time so the listeners out there can have a chance to listen and ask questions as well. I don't think it's any coincidence, Chick, that Boston and Los Angeles are among the 4 final teams in the playoffs, and we are looking at a possibility, anyway, of a Boston-Los Angeles final again. I tend to think it's not a coincidence, and you go back and you've had many players over the years, but really the ownership hasn't changed. It's been fairly stable. I think some of the credit to that has to go to management.
Well, it has changed. We had a man early, came down from Milwaukee, and not Milwaukee, but Minneapolis, Bob Short. He owned him for about 4 years, sold him to a man named Jack Kent Cook, who then owned him from about 1965 until 1980. A man named Jerry Buss bought them at that time, still has them. But the management through the years has been very careful, and they've been very lucky, too. For example, the way they got Magic Johnson was on the flip of a coin with Chicago when Magic decided to come out of Michigan State 2 years ago or 3, right? The way they got the flip of the coin, they had traded about 4 years earlier a worn-out Gail Goodrich to New Orleans for a first-round pick. And it happened to come up that year. New Orleans happened to finish last that year, and that's how they got him. Now, this year, they gave up a fellow named Don Ford. Probably the only Ford you ever heard of. Des Moines is the kind of... But Don Ford sent to Cleveland 2 or 3 years ago for a first-round pick. Now it comes up, and the Lakers are flipping for the likes, maybe, of Ralph Sampson if he comes out. You got to be lucky.
Well, one of the championships we talked about, Chick, came up in 1963, the Celtics taking on the Lakers. And I'm sure you remember most of the championship series. Now, in this particular one, the Lakers were trying to force a seventh and deciding game in Boston, but Boston, behind a brave performance by Bob Cousy, who closed out his career with this game, hung on for the victory. And now you hear the voice of Johnny Most.
Big T is up the line. This shoot is good. 109 to 107. Boston leading by 2. Wow. Boy, oh boy, the shot now by Hearn is good. 110 to 107. Boston leading by 3. Barnett, he's dangerous. He's on the right. He starts in. He stumbles. He recovers. He shoots it. It's no good. The rebound by Russell, and he gets tied up for a jump ball.
Well, and that's the way she ended up, basically, with a jump ball. Russell and another Laker player, and from there the Celtics preserved the win. We'll be back with more WHO Saturday Sports Line with Chick Hearn and possibly Johnny Most, if we can get them lined up here, in just a moment. Stay tuned.
Here's an important question for everyone who works for a living. Would you rather see your hard-earned money go to the IRS or into an IRA? Well, the right answer could bring you many happy returns. Here's what I mean. Let's say you're in the 30% tax bracket and make the maximum deposit of $2,000 into your United Central Bank IRA. Well, next year at this time, you pay $600 less in taxes. A $1,000 deposit will save you $300, and so on. It's all because your IRA deposits are tax deductible from your gross income. And it may even give you a tax refund. So instead of your hard-earned money going to the IRS, it's going to work for you in a United Central Bank IRA. But don't wait around to make up your mind because, well, if you want a happy return next year, now's the time to get started.
At United Central Bank of Des Moines, member FDIC.
When you buy Prairie Farms cottage cheese, you get more than a delicious alternative to heavy meals that weigh you down. You get the freshness guarantee that you've come to expect from Prairie Farms. Cottage cheese, always fresh, always nutritious. It's a meal in itself. Look specifically for the Prairie Farms label in your grocer's dairy case. Cottage cheese from the very extraordinary, modern and contemporary Dairy on the Prairie. Prairie Farms.
28 minutes past 1 o'clock. This is WHO Saturday Sports Line. Larry Cutler along with Mike Lee. Our guest during this section of the show, we are talking with the broadcaster from the Los Angeles Lakers. That is Chick Hearn. We expect to be contacting Johnny Most from the Boston Celtics momentarily. Chick, we were talking during the break, and all this talk about a Boston-LA series, a little bit premature. First of all, I know that a lot of people expected Seattle to come out there and get into the finals with you guys. But now it's the San Antonio Spurs, and you were mentioning during the break that a lot of people aren't taking the Spurs seriously.
No, not even the Laker fans. We can't sell tickets for this club. We got about 4,000 seats left, and if it had been Seattle, of course, we could have sold 50,000. But be that as it may, San Antonio beat Seattle 8 out of 10 times this year. The Lakers beat Seattle 8 out of 10. No, not that many. They beat them 5 out of 6. And the Los Angeles-San Antonio matchup is just ideal for thrills and NBA skills at its best. And I really think it's going to be an outstanding series. They've got a youngster they brought along at center, and he is really doing a great job. Dave Corzine out of DePaul in Chicago. He weighs about 275, and he just lays on Kareem and wears him out. But it's going to be a tremendous series, and I think Philadelphia is going to give Boston a heck of a series.
Well, I tend to agree with you there. Watching the Sixers last night on the 2 playing against Milwaukee, they put on some hellacious defense last night. They had the fast break going. There was no way Milwaukee was going to stand that game. And I think a lot of people are looking past the Sixers, looking at past history, and saying that the Celtics are going to walk away with it because of their talent. That Sixer club is a talented one.
They really are, and it might be a blessing in disguise with Holland's hurt. Holland can't guard his suitcase in an airport, and they've got Tony in there, and this young second-year man is really playing tough defense. And now they got Cheeks going to the basket, and that's what took Milwaukee out of it. They're a good ball club, and if they can get any kind of consistency, which is questionable, but any kind out of Darryl Dawkins, they could be really rough. Chick didn't have a big series against Milwaukee.
Chick, I'd like to turn to more general issues right now as far as the National Basketball Association is concerned. Just recently, this has been some big news around here. The Big Ten is on an experimental basis putting in the three-point play. It's more than likely that it will come off this year on an experimental basis, but without a shot clock. Maybe you've been able to keep up with that out there in Los Angeles.
I've been reading about it, yeah. I find it very exciting in the pro game. Each club, with the exception of ours, practically every club, has a one or two real expert three-point shooters. It is a savage weapon. It knocks the wind right out of you. You can be up by 7, and all of a sudden you look and you're only up by 4, and you still got a minute and a half to play, and with that 24-second clock, you've got excitement right down to the wire.
I'd like to ask you, Chick, I'm thinking about some of the possible things teams might try to do. Let's say Team B has the ball. They're down by 6 points. There isn't much time left to go in the game, so Team B's designated three-point shooter, let's say, starts bombing away. Couldn't the defensive team simply, that's leading, Team A, simply pin the arms of the guy who's trying to shoot? And in college basketball, it would be an intentional foul. You'd step up to the line. You couldn't possibly get 3 points at the line.
That's absolutely right. All you can get 2. Now, you're talking about college ball or pro or
That's
both?
college ball.
All right, college ball, that would be a smart play. Absolutely. Give him the flagrant or intentional foul and give him 2 free throws. You're still up by 4. I agree with you totally on that. One thing that should be understood, Larry, is that the player that shoots three-point plays in the NBA has to be kind of a total player. He can't just be sent in for that one particular thing. Freddie Brown in Seattle, in fact, he went to the University of Iowa, right? Freddie comes in and he hits a three-pointer. But in the meantime, his guy scores 35. There's 2 sides to the coin. You've got to play defense. Believe it or not, there is defense played in the NBA. And I think that that'll be the deciding factor. You mentioned yourself, you volunteered it, that you thought that Philadelphia won it last night with some great defense. There's a lot of great defense being played, and I said to you early in the program that one of the Lakers' biggest turnarounds since Riley took over is trap-type defense and defenses that are just turning sometimes outstanding basketball players into putty in the Lakers' hands. And it's even hard for me to believe, and this is my 20th year with this club.
Chick, let me ask you this. What is the NBA rule as far as intentional fouls for somebody who's trying a shot beyond the three-point arc?
It would be 2 shots. If he's fouled in the act of shooting and made the basket, you could get a 4-point play out of it.
But if the guy doesn't even get a chance to take the shot?
Then you'd get 2 shots.
So it's the same in pro ball as it would be with the Big Ten then?
Yeah. The one rule that you have in college ball, and I do a lot of college ball on the coast, that I think is better than the pros, and that is where the free throw is the bonus situation. You have to make the first or in the second. In the NBA, you do not. And I think it's a very bad weakness because I see guys time and time again go up there kind of nonchalantly and miss the first one because they know they got another one coming regardless, whereas the college kids got the pressure of having to make the first one. I think it's a great rule.
Chick, there are, by the way, if people want to call in, feel free to do so. Locally, 282-5111 is our Des Moines and surrounding suburbs line. 1-800-532-1111, the toll-free statewide watch line. Outside the state, a prepaid call must be made. 282-5120. We're speaking with the play-by-play broadcaster for the Los Angeles Lakers, Chick Hearn. Chick, a lot of people feel the NBA regular season is too long. It just goes on and on and on. Then you've got a playoff situation which goes down into May and possibly, well, I guess it'd be the latter part of this month before the NBA final series is over. How do the players feel about that?
I think that the players, on the whole, would rather have it this way than take a pay cut. I think that's a very simple way to put it. Because if they dropped 8 games off the schedule, they'd have to take a pay cut. I don't know why people point at basketball on the pro level as being too long. Football goes from, it'll start now in July, and will go till next February. Baseball goes from February until nearly November. Hockey does the same thing, etc. If you want to go to a college schedule of 26 games, fine. But the pros figure that in order to make money, in order to even break even, they've certainly got to play the 82-game schedule that they do. Whether or not they embrace too many in the playoffs, that's something that I think should be questioned. I think that they do.
What city?
Well, we've got some phone confusion. We'll take a short break right here. We'll try to anyway. Clear the phones off if we can. Chick, are you still there?
Still there.
Okay, good. We had some momentary confusions on the lines. Now we can go ahead and return to normal questioning. What I'd like to do, Chick, is when we come back, we'll ask you a little bit more about a possible Celtics-Lakers series, and then we'll go to some highlights from a 1966 game. That's coming up on Saturday Sportsline on WHO. Stay with us.
Looking for a place to treat your little leaguers after the big game? Why not bring them to the Great American Slush Sale at participating Casey's General Stores? Here's how it works. Buy any size slush in any one of 6 delicious flavors and get another one for just a penny. That's right, just 1 cent. Nothing cools you off on a hot day like an icy cold slush from Casey's. And now you get the second one for just a penny. Take advantage of the Great American Slush Sale on now at participating Casey's General Stores.
This is Jim Zabel. It may not be true that everyone has an opinion on sports, as the saying goes, but I'll venture to say that everyone who follows sports or who takes part in it has an opinion. And with the kind of sports boom we're experiencing right now in Iowa and around the nation, that has to include the vast majority of the people. So whether it's collegiate, high school, pro, spectator, or participation, or outdoor sports, you're invited to be a part of the one show that lets you voice an opinion or hear an opinion on anything in the world of sports you want to talk about or find out about on Sportsline, weeknights on WHO Radio at 6:30. Tune in and call in.
We're telling our story all over the land,
where farm and city go hand in hand. We're putting the good things into your day.
Entertaining you more,
informing you best.
A service and sound to the great Midwest.
WHO.
Says a lot for Iowa.
WHO, where the people you hear are real. WHO, with listeners who think and feel. WHO, good people to get to know. WHO, Info Radio.
It's 22 minutes before 2 o'clock. This is WHO Saturday Sportsline. Larry Cutler and Mike Lee, our producer Dave Bragger, technical director Lil McDonald, our newsman Alan Drish, and we're visiting with the play-by-play man for the Los Angeles Lakers, Chick Hearn. Chick, about the playoff setup, many people are critical of it. First of all, you've got the mini-series where a team like Philadelphia can finish second, end up taking on a team that finishes about 500 and can get knocked off in that situation. A lot of people don't like it. A lot of the teams, of course, like Philadelphia and like your club last year who lost to Houston, and Pat Riley said that had they gone on with Houston about 7 games, there's no question the Lakers would have won it. Also, what about the playoff setup where you can get a team like Houston who can go get hot in the playoffs and get into the NBA Finals like last year with a 500 record?
That is true. It's the most unfair thing there is in the world, the mini playoff, playing 2 out of 3. One bad call by a referee, one bounce of the ball, one double dribble, one turnover can take you right out of a whole season's work. I think the minimum playoff number of games should be best 3 out of 5. And I think that we'll probably come to that before long and maybe not have quite as many teams in it. But as you say, a good team can have an off night and get beaten, and that's exactly what happened to Los Angeles Lakers last year in Game 3 right here on the Forum floor.
You know, Chick, there haven't been too many surprises. So you look at the National Hockey League playoffs, there have been a lot of surprises over there, but really haven't been any this year in the NBA, any shockers, really.
Well, the NHL doesn't play any mini-series, 2 out of 3 there. This mini is 3 out of 5. But this year, no. The NBA playoffs have gone pretty much to form. I thought the possible exception was Seattle because they had home court advantage and because they play at the Kingdom, because they have such a rambunctious crowd. I thought they would beat Stan Albeck, the coach, and San Antonio. But San Antonio just proved again how good they really are. I'm very, very fearful for the Los Angeles Lakers in this series.
Well, Chick, the Celtics and the Lakers have staged some monumental championship series with the Celtics coming up on top every time, as we mentioned that earlier, of course. And that goes all the way back to 1959 when the Lakers were still in Minneapolis. The 1966 series, though, Chick, was among the most exciting because the Lakers had forced a 7th and final game in Boston, but the Celtics hung on again. After apparently wrapping up the game, right now we're going to switch to the play-by-play of that game back in 1966 with the Celtics play-by-play announcer, Johnny Most. Here it is.
Walt Hazzard will put the ball in a play. 95-89 the score. Hazzard looking around. He has not got the ball yet. Now he does. All right, the pass comes in to Ellis out deep. On the right, it goes to King driving. He lays it up and in. There are 9 seconds left. The pass comes over to Sam Jones and knocked out of his hands. And it's off Sam out of bounds. 6 seconds left, and there's only a 4-point lead. Well, suddenly the Lakers have a chance. Now it goes into Ellis. His quick jump shot, Ellis, is good. 4 seconds left, and the lead is down to 2 points. All right, Casey with the ball. Gets surrounded. 1 second. Is it? It's all over. Havlicek got the pass, and he gets mobbed. It's all over.
And that was Johnny Most of the Celtics. A very exciting finish to the 1966 championship. Chick, in your opinion, what was the most exciting Lakers-Celtic championship series? Would it have been 66?
That was one of the most, yeah. The Lakers went to Boston one year leading 2-0, and then they split in Boston, led 3-1. This was in 69, and made a couple of mistakes and lost the series on a Don Nelson jumper, believe it or not. Hit the heel of the basket, went straight up about 6 feet, fell down through the hole, virtually at the buzzer, and gave the Celtics their win, and that gave them the last back-to-back championships that the NBA has known. And that is always something that you wonder about, whether or not the Celtics can do it back-to-back. The Lakers tried hard last year, but they lost Magic for 45 games, and then when he returned from the knee surgery, he wasn't just the same and didn't come back into his own until this year. Something that you might think about if you're trying to predict the series, in his 13th season in the NBA, Chamberlain led a club to a world championship. In Russell's 13th year in the NBA, he led a club to another world championship. This is Kareem's 13th year.
Back in 1969, that was when the Boston Celtics, as you say, defeated the Los Angeles Lakers. That was the last year in which Boston and Los Angeles matched up. By the way, it's been 13 years, if you want to stick with that number, since the Boston and Los Angeles teams have hooked up. So how's that for irony or voodoo?
Out there.
Pardon?
I said that's putting some number 13s on the board.
I guess it is. And last time the Lakers were able to play the Celtics back in '69, it was when Boston last won back-to-back titles, and here we are again faced with the possibility: can Boston do it again, win back-to-back titles? If they do so, would it be again against the Lakers? All sorts of things coming up like that.
I would tell you very honestly who the Laker players would like to play if they get to the finals.
All right.
They'd like to play Boston.
I'm not surprised.
They feel that Boston is the better club in the East. They think they're better than Philly. So do I. I think they have a lot more character than the Philly basketball club. And I think character is so important when it's down to the nitty-gritty. The playoffs get very, very physical. Why the referees let it get more physical than during the year, I do not know, but they do. And I believe for that one reason that San Antonio has a real good chance. They can really get physical out there. And Philadelphia's not bad in that regard either.
Chick, what do you think the Lakers will have to do to reacquire the National Basketball Association title?
I think they'll have to sit on Maxwell and McHale. McHale is the most underrated player on that team. We know that Kareem can do as well as, or maybe better than Parrish, and I figure them to be a standoff. I think Bird and Magic Johnson pretty much a standoff. Maxwell, he can do a lot of things in a hurry. Their backcourt isn't as good as the Lakers, not even close to it. Nixon will eat Archibald up, and Magic Johnson would kill M.L. Carr back there. But, in fact, Magic hurts anybody that he plays against. I don't know who would try to guard Larry Bird. I've seen Bird with some tremendous performances against Los Angeles. One fellow that you don't mention here is Jamal Wilkes. Jamal is so good and so smooth and so much like the silk name that he has, that he gets it done night after night after night, and all of a sudden you look down at your scorecard and he's got 20 to 30 points, and you just don't realize it. He is really something, and I don't know if Boston can handle him.
Chick Hearn from the Los Angeles Lakers, thanks so much for joining us during this segment of WHO Saturday Sports Line. Keep up the good work, and best of luck to the Lakers through the NBA title series.
All right, nice talking to you guys.
Johnny Most, the play-by-play broadcaster, has been that for several years. I don't know exactly how many years, Johnny.
29 years with the Celtics and 31 overall in the league. I was with the Knickerbockers for 2 years.
You've been right in there with Jim Zabel doing sports. It's 2:36 in the afternoon. We invite your calls. We're talking with Johnny Most of the Boston Celtics, 282-5111 locally, 1-800-532-1111. Johnny, you've now got the series I know everybody wanted in Boston. I mean, Boston and Milwaukee would have been a good series, but everybody wanted to see the all-out war between the Sixers and the Celtics come back again, and now that's what you've got. It should be another dynamite series.
Well, you know, I tell you, I'm looking forward to this series myself. I know the fans, recall it from last year, and they're looking forward to it. But I really don't think that anything, from the standpoint of sheer drama, can can duplicate what happened last year. I don't know what the results are going to be. I personally believe that the Celtics are capable of beating them, but I don't know whether the thing is ever going to reach the dramatic pinnacles that it reached last year, when the Celtics were down 3-1, but not only were they down 3-1 and came back, but in each of the next 3 games with about 2 minutes to go, they were behind. And so the sheer drama is something I can't imagine two teams would be able to repeat. And if they do repeat it, I'm not sure, but we might lose a few people, health-wise. That was the most emotional thing I've ever seen in my life.
What do you look for in this year's series? Obviously, the Sixers want revenge. They feel that they clutched last year. They wanted to get a chance to get back into the NBA Finals. And the Celtics, of course, would like to be the first team, since they did it back in the late 60s and the early 70s, to get back to win the NBA title back-to-back.
No, I didn't really pick that up, but were you saying what did I anticipate might happen?
Right, with the Sixers want revenge, and obviously the Celtics want to be the first team in several years to win the NBA title back-to-back. What do you look for in the series this time?
The Sixers are a great, great basketball team. They really are. I think they got a bad break insofar as their relationship with competition with us is concerned, in that they lost Lionel Hollins, apparently, for the whole series. That's not good from their standpoint, because Hollins was a thorn in Boston's side in many ways. And offensively, of course, he could be a very good offensive player. Defensively, he's a harassing type of player. He'll get in the passing lane. He'll come up on blind sides. He'll execute traps where you least expect a trap, coming at the wrong moment almost. And so because it takes you by surprise, he'll slap a ball away. If a rebounder brings the ball down too low, he comes up along the baseline on the blind side and he'll steal it out of your hands. He's a very, very quick ball player, and he gambles a lot. Now, a guy like that you can murder if you're looking for him to gamble. I remember in the series before, in one of the few moments, or not even in the series, the year before, during the regular season, the Celtics had Pete Maravich. And that's the kind of thing you don't do when Maravich is on the floor, because he was just too smart and he had too many tricks. But in one of the games in which Pete was able to really play the way he could play, Hollins was doing that, and Maravich was just backdooring him to death. And I think, excuse me, I think, nevertheless, his harassing tactics were very important to Philadelphia, and I think they're going to miss him against us. However, they have got Dawkins back. Bobby Jones gets more playing time now than he did last year, and that's a plus. I think that Andrew Toney is beginning to calm his game down a little bit, so he doesn't fly off the handle and get as erratic as he could be last year. This is going to be a very tough series, really. Our outside shooting has not looked good in the last series and toward the end of the season. But the Celtic inside game was very powerful, very powerful. However, Philadelphia's inside game is powerful. I just don't see that much to choose between these two ball clubs. I really don't.
Okay, Johnny, we'll remind the listeners out there.
A hot hand here or a hot hand there could decide the whole thing.
All right, Johnny, let's remind the listeners of the numbers to call, 282-5111 here in town. If you want to talk with Johnny Most, the voice of the Boston Celtics, our toll-free Watts line is 1-800-532-1111. Johnny, how does the Philadelphia-Boston matchup for 1982 compare to the Philadelphia-Boston matchups in specifically 1965 when Havlicek stole the ball, and 1968 when the Celtics came from 3-1 down to win the series 4-3?
Well, let's take a look at it. I never made the comparison like that, but let's take a look at the two ball clubs. This year, Philadelphia apparently is intending to go with their original starting lineup when the season began of Caldwell, Jones, Dawkins, and Dr. J up front, with Toney and Cheeks in the backcourt. Now, back in 1968, remember, they had a ball player there by the name of Wilt Chamberlain, and that changed the matchup complexion around entirely. But Boston also had a Bill Russell, and Chamberlain and Russell went at each other for many years. Now, I don't think that Dawkins or Caldwell Jones begin to compare to Chamberlain. Robert Parrish, on the other hand, does compare to Russell, in a sense. He has more offense than Russell. Nobody who ever lived had more defense than Russell. But Robert tries to play defense a little like Russell. Not quite as much, but he does play a little bit like him. In the corners, Boston's cornerman at that time in 1968, you're talking about the 68 team?
Yes, 68.
Yeah, in 68, the cornermen were Bailey Howell and Tom Sanders. And Howell, might be compared a little bit in what he did with Larry Bird. He's not nowhere near as effective a ball player, but a good one, a passer, a shooter, a very good offensive rebounder. Sanders was a defensive specialist, a guy who could really play defense. And so on the other side, you've got Maxwell, who isn't that great a defensive player, although he's getting better at it. I think they look a little different. I think the two teams look a little different, but I think the comparison between the two ball clubs, the closeness of the matchup, would be about the same. Boston in those days, in 1968, had Don Chaney, a defensive specialist, and JoJo White back in the backcourt, along with. Oh no, I'm sorry, they didn't. No, that's too soon. No, they had Larry Siegfried and Sam Jones. That's who they had, right? Larry Siegfried, and both of whom were very good offensive players, and Siggy was a pretty good defensive player as well. They no longer had Casey Jones. So I'd say the backcourt favorably matched up, I would say, with what they have now.
Johnny, this is a very difficult question. I'd like you, as the play-by-play voice of the Celtics for these many years, to think about it for a little bit, and then maybe after our Associated Press sports update, which is coming up momentarily, we can get an answer. I'd like you to perhaps go through your mind and think of all the Celtic teams that have won championships and have come close to winning championships, and then perhaps give us an answer on who the best Celtic team was, what year, and then go through 2, 3, 4, and so on.
I really don't. I think there were 4 or 5 that would have to stand out in my mind. One team that didn't win the championship, I think, was as good as any of the other teams they had, and that was the team in 1973.
Okay, Johnny, we'll get to that just a little bit later after our Associated Press sports update. That's coming up next on WHO Saturday Sports Line.
Yvonne Lendl will be one of the contestants for the WCT Tournament of Champions title tomorrow afternoon. Lendl breezed by Jose Louis Clerc in semifinal action today, 6-2 and 7-5. Lendl, the tourney's number 2 seed, now awaits the winner of the John McEnroe-Eddie Dibbs match, which is currently underway. Despite the looks of an easy appearance on that court today, Lendl said that, well, it was a tough match.
I just had no chance on those match points because 2 of them, first and third, he played great shots, and on the second he hit an ace on the line, which I couldn't return, and it was on his serve, so you really cannot count on winning the game on the opponent's serve every time. You should count on your game. And he just played good points on those match points, and what can you do?
In that second match, Eddie Dibbs leading John McEnroe in the first set 4-3. At the Women's Italian Open tennis tournament, Americans Chris Everett Lloyd and Billie Jean King have advanced. Lloyd defeated Bonnie Gadusic, while King sprung the big surprise of the day by defeating third-seeded Sylvia Hanika. 16-year-old Lisa Bonder also won today, defeating a South African opponent. Baseball at Shea Stadium, Joel Blumberg has a report.
It's another nail-biter here as we're in the top of the 8th inning, and the Giants lead the Mets by a score of 4-3. Mets have 3 runs on 4 hits, all coming in the second inning. The Giants got 1 back in the 3rd on Tom O'Malley's first major league hit, an RBI single, another in the 7th on Jack Clark's sacrifice fly, and 2 more here in the top of the 8th on Chili Davis's bases-loaded single. 4-3 Giants, top of the 8th. Joel Blumberg from Shea Stadium.
Other games, the Dodgers and Montreal in a wild one up in Montreal. 9-8 the score. Dodgers leading it. That game now in the 6th inning. Houston and Chicago. In Chicago, it's the Cubs 3 and the Astros 1. That game now through 4 complete. In the American League, Kansas City and Toronto 2-1. Toronto on top. That game through 7. Chicago leads Detroit 3-0. Minnesota trailing Milwaukee by 4. This is Mike Gracia on the Sports Line.
Hey, you got a minute? It's me, Telly Savalas. And I know one thing for sure. America has found its better car, Ford Escort. It's knocking the socks off every car line in America, and that's based on actual manufacturers' reported retail deliveries. And America has found its better deal, the best deal being offered by any major car company. Ford Care coverage plus cash. For 2 years or 24,000 miles, whichever comes first, Ford Care gives you total coverage. Coverage on virtually everything. About all you kick in for is gas. Of course, Ford Care is a limited warranty, excluding things you'd expect like tires, fluids, accidents, and abuse. Take delivery between now and June 6th from your Ford dealer to get the cash and the coverage. Limit 1 car per customer. Upfront cash. Ford Care. Quality. Escort. Ford delivers all right, but don't take my word for it. Just ask an Escort owner.
If you listen for the next 60 seconds, you may never have to bag grass clippings again. Boland's, originator of the mulching mower, has authorized the biggest sale in its 50-year history. The Boland's Big Event. See prices below 1978 levels on the patented 22-inch mulching mower. A lawn machine backed by over 20 years of mulching excellence and used by hundreds of thousands of homeowners. You won't have to bag again with a Boland's mulcher. The Boland's Big Event. And save hundreds of dollars on the best tractors and riders you can buy at prices never before seen on Boland's work machines. Would you believe a powerful 16-horsepower twin-cylinder yard tractor for under $19.99? And it includes a 42-inch mower. The Boland's Big Event. Come in and see the lowest prices on the best equipment you can buy. Come in and win a free trip to the World's Fair. Register for door prizes and get free balloons for the kids. Now you can afford the best. This week at all participating dealers, including
Allen Garden Center, 5491 Southeast 6th Avenue, Des Moines, Iowa, 50317, 515-266-7170.
If it's happening now in the sports world, you'll hear about it, all about it, on WHO Saturday Sports Line.
All right, we're back on the air, and this is Mike Lee along with Larry Cutler in the studio, and on the other end of the line is Johnny Most, the man who's been calling Boston Celtic basketball since 1953. Before the break, we asked John to sit back and contemplate a little bit the best Boston Celtic teams that ever came along. If they won the championship or not doesn't really matter. And John, why don't you go ahead and run down, in your opinion, some of the best Boston Celtic teams?
I did mention the fact that I thought that 73 team with Havlicek getting hurt in the playoffs was a shame, because that was a team that won 68 ball games. And that was a team that won the 68 games with some great teams in the league. The Lakers were great those years. The Lakers the year before had won 69. And so consequently, you know that they didn't fall apart in 1 year. The Knicks were a very powerful team in those days. The Bucks were a powerful team. So the Celtics winning like that, it was amazing. However, in the playoffs, Havlicek got hurt, and the entire rhythm of the ball club was destroyed a little bit because he was trying to play one-handed, and he did it for one game. They stole a game that way, but it was a team that was not a team of destiny, and they didn't go to the playoff finals. However, they were a great ball club. This team of the last 3 years has to be considered a great team. I think it's only one of 2 teams in history that won over 60 games in a season, 3 seasons in a row. This team of the year that Walter Brown died, the team that won it for Walter, in a sense, sentimentally, was a great, great ball club. That was Tommy Heinsohn's last year as a player. But they also had Willie Knowles on that team, and they had the Jones boys on that ball club, and John Havlicek. It was a great team.
1964?
Bill Sherman's last year, when they had Sherman and Cousy and both Joneses and Frank Ramsey, that was something else, that ball club. That really was. And I don't know. I'm sentimentally attached to the very first one. That had some flaws on it, and it won a championship, but it was a great ball club. But I think the teams I mentioned may have been the very best Celtic teams of all time.
That last one with Frank Ramsey would have been 1961, his last year?
60-61 season. Ramsey retired in 64, but that team had Ramsey plus Sharman, Cousy, and the Joneses. Now, the next year, Sharman was gone for the 61-62 season. He was gone. And then 62-63, after that season, Cousy retired. So that 60-61 team was the only year that, that was one of the years that all of them were there at the same time. 59-60 had them also.
Johnny, this year's team, I think everybody finally realized how good it was when Larry Bird went out with an injury, because what happened when he came back was when you put a guy with the talent of Larry Bird on the bench to come in, Not many teams have that kind of luxury, but many other teams said that they were scared to death that Kevin McHale was now in the starting lineup. So I guess that's where everybody saw that the Celtics had so much depth, and I think that's where everybody gets the opinion that the Celtics are going to win the NBA title again this year.
Well, I think it was an overall attitude that made the team win so many games that way, because prior to that, anytime some adversity came up, the general consensus always was, give the ball to Larry, he'll do it for us. And he would, you know. But when he wasn't available for those 5 games, and then coming back, he was just feeling his way back into timing and shape. It took him a couple of games to do that. The other guys said, hey, there's no Larry out here to do it for us. We got to do it ourselves. And they were capable of doing it. I think the most positive thing that came out of those negative injuries was that it really took a great talent like Robert Parrish and completely fired him up, because he knew it was almost a situation where on occasions he'd have to do it by himself. That's never the case with the Boston Celtics, but Parrish responded to the adversity that way, to the point where he was absolutely awesome during that streak. And I think it had a very good effect on the Celtics, because it really brought Parrish to the peak of his game. And unless I miss my guess, this guy is about to have a sensational playoff.
Johnny, what is probably the most exciting memory you have of all the playoffs that you've done in all these many years?
That is almost too difficult to say, but I would say that it is very, very difficult to outdo the thrill of being there for the very first World Championship that you as a broadcaster or a player or a coach or even a spectator ever participates in. And so I say that the thrill of being with them when they won their first World Championship is going to always be very hard to beat. I mean, that was a very thrilling day.
1957.
I think that it would be hard for anything to be a bigger thrill than that. There were some other great thrills almost as great. But I think winning that first one and being part of the very first World Championship, which turned out to be the start of a dynasty, that has to be a thrill that, you know, never going to take second place to anything.
Okay, Johnny, you've got the Boston-Philadelphia series, but should the Celtics come out of that one, what about the other series? Chick Hearn said the Lakers were scared to death of San Antonio because people have been looking past them. What do you look for in the other series, and could you go a little further, and should the Celtics get in the finals?
Philadelphia series is concerned, and the way I feel about it is that when both these two ball clubs play up to their absolute maximum potential, sometimes just one mistake during the game is going to decide the whole thing. I think Boston's going to win it in 7.
What about the other series? How do you look at that one?
I think the Lakers should win it, but I think they're going to have a lot more trouble with this ball club than they anticipated earlier. I would say the Lakers. I look for another 7-gamer there. I think San Antonio is going to push them to the limit.
Pat Riley won his first NBA coaching championship that year, the first of 5 he's accumulated as of 2021. Chick Hearn died in 2002, soon after his final broadcast with the Lakers. Johnny Most died in early 1993. For Saturday Sportsline Memories, I'm Michael D. Lee.